It's another week in the For Your Reference household. And that's usually what I would say for all of those beloved friends and lovers that have been subscribed to our podcast feed. First of all, we just want to say thank you so much. But you would have noticed here and there over the past couple of months, we weren't able to release an episode. It's not a dramatic reason. The For Your Reference podcast has, as we like to refer to, a firm foundation. As OT would agree, I am stacked like a brick house. But unfortunately, you know, with everything that's going on in the world, with the capitalism of it all, with our jobs refusing to acknowledge that anything is going wrong and everything is burning around us, and we still need to deliver probably more outcome. It's a lot. It's a lot. And we love this podcast. We love doing it. And unfucking fortunately, sometimes life gets too much and we're not able to release an episode. So given the fact that we haven't been able to release an episode, we didn't want to have it going 2 weeks in a row. So as a treat, as a thank you to all of you that are subscribed to our feed, we are going to be previewing our exclusive Patreon show that is available to our Pardon the Pun tier patrons and above. This is the October episode of 2020 as we are rolling into the ooky spooky season. So first off, thank you so much. We are in our third year of podcasting. We see that people are still continually downloading our show, even in times that we aren't able to release an episode. And we still are charting around the world on Apple Podcasts. And yes, it's a wankery thing. Yes, it's a splooshy thing, but it's also a very sincere thank you so much. Please enjoy. Welcome, most beloved friends and lovers. Welcome to the exclusive Ref Plus, the show for you, not just you, but you.
And you, and you. Mm-hmm.
Wow, you couldn't just let me have this.
I'm making it extra special.
Extra ooky spooky special indeed. I'm going to miss doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you. We take kindly all around the town. So let's just quickly go through the episodes that we've released in October. 6/10. Fuck, I still can't say it. That was our first episode of October, which I guess you could call ooky spooky. The boys. And then we had our bonus trick or treat and also Chucky. And shout out to OT because we did miss out on a week, but then my need to try and keep us on track with at least 4 uploads a month, we were able to achieve that. So I just want to say thank you, my love.
Mm-hmm, no worries.
But yeah, that's the month that we've had. It's been a very ooky spooky month, OT.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we started watching Chucky in like March. March was like a weird time where you kind of just watch what felt good and what felt right and just let you escape everything that was going on in March. But yeah, Chucky was a wild ride. And thank you for joining me. It was nice to share the screen with you, my love.
Yeah, I'll pop around once in a while.
Oh, nice. Everyone's getting their money's worth, hey?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I also noticed in particular this year with Halloween, we took a lot of bite out of franchises.
Yeah.
So we didn't really commit to, like, we watched, quite a few, which we'll talk about today, as well as the ones that were voted on. But it was fun. It was fun to like taste little franchises without committing to all of it.
Yeah, agreed. I'd still want to finish a lot of what we started already.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I also don't feel the pressure.
Yeah, same.
Okay, so let's talk about the Halloween specific movies that we've watched during the month. Saw 1 and Saw 2.
Yeah, so I've watched the whole Saw series.
All right, settle down.
It's just weird rewatching it because it didn't really get gorish until the second one.
Yeah.
Where the first one had a bit of story and they focused more on that rather than the brutality and the gorishness of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Which is surprising because once you get so far into the series, you kind of forget how it all started.
True. But I will say the first Saw was thoroughly enjoyable. I really enjoyed a baby Winnell screaming for his life. I want to live. I really enjoyed it. Whether I enjoy the further installments, I guess time will tell. Paul did say that it's his favorite horror franchise.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's like I enjoy the story and not the torture porn. Yeah, so I'm excited to, slowly unravel the craziness that is Saw. And from, I guess, spoiler, if you guys haven't watched the Saw franchise, I think I'm the only person. The man's dead, right? Or is he going to come back to life? The man's dead and the lady's carrying on his legacy, right?
No, I'm not telling you anything.
Because there was the recent one where it was called Jigsaw and it looked like a man with the makeup on. Anyway, I guess that's some exciting times to look ahead. I'm not sure if it's exciting. I did enjoy Julio and Alex's trip through the Halloween franchise, but we only watched the first one and we felt very lukewarm on it, OT.
It's one of those things I really never got to warm up to Michael Myers as a character.
So, but you did try it, right?
Yeah. Okay. I've watched Halloween throughout my whole sort of growing up and adulthood when I was super into the horror genre. But I don't know. It just never rocked my boat.
Okay. And I guess that didn't change on watching the recent one.
No,
well, not watching it recently, right?
It just reaffirmed what I felt back then.
Yeah, it's kind of like Child's Play, like the first Child's Play. I don't see how a whole franchise was built off on Halloween. But again, you said that we'll watch one a year, and I think that's your way of getting out of having to watch the whole franchise in one sort of month. But there you go. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's also because he didn't really do much in the first movie. And a lot of the time when they talk about like the most gruesome, the most scary or kill counts, usually Michael Myers is on top of the list. So he might have gotten, worse as the franchises went on. But I think all he did was stab that one guy, defying all physics with a very thin knife, and the guy stayed suspended in the air. But I don't think there was much violence, at least in the first one.
Oh, there's a couple of brutal moments. It started off him as a kid.
Yeah, but to warrant everyone's conversation about him being so extreme.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really know where that fits in. And the last one, before we go to the poll, is Jeepers Creepers.
Oh, yeah.
We watched it.
We did watch it. And I feel like I enjoyed it the first time way more.
Like earlier in your life?
Then watching it now, I was like, I don't remember it being this, especially Justin, what's his name? Justin Long?
Justin, how do you not remember Justin Long?
I don't know. The acting was a bit weird. Not that you go for horror to see Meryl Streep sort of performances, but,
I think you copied what I said in one of our Halloween episodes.
No, I don't think I did.
You're welcome to original thought, OT. Even though my thought trumps all.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know. It's definitely the weaker of the bunch of Halloween movies that we've watched during this month. Even the guy, I don't even remember what his name was, but like the horror guy in Jeepers Creepers, he wasn't really much to write home about. He gives Michael Myers more personality just by default. And it was really weird because they had like this sexual tension, and it wasn't until like maybe 10 minutes in we found out that there were siblings.
Mom is gonna kill you, like, Mom.
There are some very confusing boners, definitely indeed, with the franchise. So let's move on to the poll, OT. Usually I try to keep 5 options on there. We have at at least 4 of them have been voted on.
Okay.
So we'll talk about all of them in the order that they were voted in. But the one that didn't get any votes, unfortunately for you, was Black Box.
Oh, I always try and give a lot.
Black tax?
Not even black tax. I try to be really open and really try to understand where the writer, where the directors are coming from.
Yep.
And I don't know, it just lost its way. I felt like the concept was strong. The execution just wasn't quite right.
Yeah. Well, no one voted on this. So
and I think they focused too much on the technicalities behind it. I was like, cool, but there's so much more you could do with the story.
Yeah. I love how you talked about no one voted for it, but I appreciate your input. But what I will say, adding on to something that wasn't voted on, was I think now we're maybe not in reality, but, narrative wise, we're very used to AI and technology and the ramifications and the leaps and bounds technology is capable of. So I don't care for explaining to me how the technology works. And then that movie focused on that a lot.
Yeah, it's like going into a Black Mirror episode and then focusing on how the app calculates the numbers and how it stores the data. And
you want to see how that drives human emotion and the desperacy of human emotion.
No one could give a fuck how it runs behind the scenes.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless you have Kaluuya behind the scenes peddling the numbers or peddling for it to stay
50
powered
million
up.
merits. Yeah, look at you. Season 1, vintage Black Mirror. Look at you, OT. Let's move on to things in the poll that were actually voted on. The highest votes we got was for Borat 2, or I think it's Borat subsequent movie film.
Oh, I enjoyed it.
Okay, so let's talk generally. Since these were voted on ones, we can spend a bit of time on it. Let's talk generally on how you feel or how you felt about Borat, the first movie and the one now.
The first time I watched the Borat, I think I was confused and I didn't know what to expect. I was like, what the fuck did I just watch? And I think I gave up halfway. So I was watching it with my brothers and his friends and I was just like, yeah, this is not for me.
Yeah.
Watched it a second time. I was like, I see. But that was much later in life. And I really, really, really loved it.
Yeah.
Jump into Borat 2. I don't know. It was just fun. It was fun seeing him do what he does best. Regardless of whether or not most of it was scripted, it was still in his element.
Well, let's talk about the Rudy Giuliani section, because I specifically remember Ben, when he was giving his review for Borat 2, he made a mention of how heavily edited the Rudy Giuliani section was. And I mentioned that to you while we were watching it about Ben's thoughts. And you are, I guess, still under the impression that was pretty real.
Yeah, he did what he did. Like, I didn't see it as them cutting scenes and to make them, seem a sort of way. It was just awkward.
Yeah.
And I think Giuliani just leaned into it. Saw an attractive lady. I was like, you know what? She's being super open. Why not? And then the bed thing, I was like, ooh, this is, it felt really weird and awkward for me.
I think there was some truth to it. And I think a couple of days ago, Rudy Giuliani was defending, I think he said he was readjusting his trousers after the being mic'd and stuff.
His shot in.
So for him to have to defend something, then perhaps something did possibly. It makes me think, and also the fact, because who is America? You had Sacha Baron Cohen getting actual members of government doing ridiculous things. I don't remember who in particular, but he had his pants down. Was it about being gay or? Oh,
how to defeat terrorists.
Yes.
Pull your pants down and run through them.
Yeah. So
butt naked.
Because it's so ridiculous, you could dismiss it as it not being real. But we've also seen how real people can do things that possibly they wouldn't have done without some sort of encouraging. And we also had, what was her name? Tula, the daughter. She kind of made a scenario in which Rudy Giuliani would be more open to to be his self.
Yep.
Right. So yeah, I do think that there was definitely like let's talk about it for a second. Let's talk about Sacha Baron Cohen generally, because there's different types of thoughts on him and how people feel about him. I would generally say that I don't think, like, I definitely think if you were to take Sacha Baron Cohen and his work on the surface, then you're really not getting what he's doing, is what I would say. It's kind of like when people get more offended at what South Park do as opposed to what South Park is like depicting, because a lot of the time South Park is reflecting the mirror back on people. Like, you just think about, like, what is it, the superhero friendship group where they're depicting all of the different gods around the world. Like, there's preposterousness and there's incredulousness in real life, and you have people that like to turn the eye towards that. And I feel like Sacha Baron Cohen is very similar to that. You know, people talk about how he is very learned and he knows exactly what he's doing. Other people say he does shock porn. You know, he does it to get a reaction out of people. I feel like he exists in both worlds, but I do think if you were just to take my wife on the surface, then cool, yeah, that's fun, bro entertainment. But also at the same time, there's a lot of themes that he's bringing to the surface that a lot of the time, especially around the table with your family, it's not polite dinner talk, but it's definitely stuff that is real. If you wanted to, you could tackle.
There's some aspects of him that will focus on the sort of crude nature of stuff and jokes, and fair enough. And then he targets politicians, whoever, just to show you the kind of leader you fucking have. If my leader gets tricked to do something as stupid as that, then definitely he's not the person I need to be putting policies in place.
Yeah.
Like, you just open your eyes. Like, there's a lot of people out there faking it until they try to make it. And it's just the leadership area is where it's just filled with a lot of people who are stupid as.
Yeah.
And exposing that, I'll live for that. Let them show everyone who falls for those stupid tricks or gimmicks or whatever you want to call them.
Man, OT's subsequent podcast film, hey?
Yeah.
But I definitely agree. And it's, you know, even one of his sketches, I don't think it was part of a movie, but he goes to like a rural town in America and they're proposing ways of bringing wealth into this particular town. And they're all for it and they're very excited until he mentions it's going to be a mosque, right? But it's funny and there's shock factor, but the reactions from the people are real, right?
Real
even
reactions.
Getting to a point where one man was so proud of the fact that he was going to get his gun and kill this man, right? Just openly in an open forum.
And people clap for that. You know, prejudice is real and you just see it. And
you see it in the subsequent movie film where he goes and he talks about Obama and he has this really right-wing sort of song in the middle of coronavirus, and you see people walking around with rifles and the Confederate flag and they're all feeding into it.
Yeah.
Right? So when, like, it's definitely something that is hard to face, but sometimes hard conversations need to be had.
True.
And it actually, while we're talking about this, it does remind me of the District 9 episode where I think it was Ben that brought it up, where the director was actually interviewing South African people on like other African people like finding refuge in South Africa and calling them aliens, right? Like those were genuine, real reactions, because we can all hold hands and sing Kumbaya, but at the end of the day, there are some ugly truths that we need to face as people. And sometimes we need vehicles like Sacha Baron Cohen or South Park. Yeah, so I guess that's it. I never really watched Ali G, and I know there's a whole, black appropriating. We watched that Mo Gilligan documentary, which covers on that as well with like black British comedians in that. So I've never watched Ali G. I've also never watched Love Guru. But again, that's the different Mike Myers that we're not covering today. Let's move on to another entry in the poll. Do you want to do a happy one or you want to do a a bit of a sad one.
Let's start off with the sad one.
Okay, American Murder, The Family Next Door. I gave you options.
Wow. That was something. I don't know where I've been living, but I did not know of this story.
Yeah.
And apparently it's been out there for ages and people have made documentaries on YouTube about it.
Yep.
So there's a lot of information about this case. And what shocked me is the level of detail they put their lives out on social media. Yep. Like they literally just didn't do anything other than do a collage of whatever they posted on social media and add a bit of narrative to it.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. It's really a lot. Like social media has its uses, but that just shocked the hell out of me.
It's an interesting thing, right? Because even like on our podcast, like I manage our podcast. I also have my own like Twitter account and stuff. But even I feel like there's a certain point where I just wouldn't share that, right? But maybe that's also me as a person. Like unless it's you or like my sister, I wouldn't share super intimate details about myself to other people, let alone on an online forum.
Yeah.
But I think that's also, it's a very Facebook thing to do. Like lots of people on Facebook like to share things about their kids to other families or to show off. Like, what is it? No, it's not the Jeffersons. The Joneses, keeping up with the Joneses. It's always like, you know, I've got a better life than my neighbor sort of thing. And yeah, I would say that American Murder, The Family Next Door is one of the better made documentaries that we've seen in a long time. For a while, it felt a bit like, you know, straight husbands giving handies to cult leaders in the park. Like it just, like, I don't know, recently like documentaries feel a bit ridiculous, and you also have Social Dilemma as well. But this one was made very well. It is also a bit disconcerting, like you said, that a lot of the footage was from existing Facebook posts and also from CCTV and like police dash cam and that sort of thing. But like generally what it covered, it was very sad, and it was very sobering. And you know, a lot of the time it's hard to rate it as a number because it's like the subject matter of it is very heavy. But a lot of the time you're wondering with that man, like, how did he get from A to B? And I remember you were saying you were doing some research after we watched it, that there was a lot that wasn't covered in the documentary. Because it felt like one day he realized he didn't want to be married with kids anymore. Next day he disposes of them at his workplace.
I think that's what the documentary missed, the backstory of it all.
Like, how do you get there?
Yeah. And I think watching it, you're left with more questions than answers.
But they did give a thank you to the family of the wife. So maybe they were trying to be more sensitive.
Yeah, there's a delicate balance. The documentaries nowadays are more focused on the predator than the victims, you know, and that's not something I'm for. It just makes you feel a way about it because at the end of the day, someone died, someone lost their lives, a family is struggling to cope with that. So I do appreciate a level of sensitivity when this sort of stuff is done.
Yeah, even with that recent Zac Efron, the Ted Bundy confession tapes, I think it was called. Like, one of the survivors is still alive. I think there's a BBC article where they cover people that have survived from these sorts of horrific events, and they talk about it because, you know, I honestly, even before, you know, the ID channel, like the Investigation Discovery channel, and true crime became such a big thing to watch. Like, it was interesting to, you know, read and watch stuff, especially about cults. That's kind of, you know, where I tend to lean. But I personally don't understand like true crime podcasts or people that are like constantly watching these things, because it's like unless you become a bit like desensitized to it, perhaps, because when you're watching it, it's about someone dying.
And I think a lot of people are desensitized by it. And I remember when ID came, and at least in Kenya, they started showing the advertisements or previews of the shows that are coming up, and my parents were just stuck there wondering what the fuck was that? it's not. It just makes you want to watch it, and then when they started watching it, they got hooked to it.
Yeah, and it would always be a kink thing, like sexy love affair gone wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then you end up eating dinner watching these stuff, and you're
Right.
like, this isn't right.
Yeah. So yeah, we watched that at the end of like a weeknight, and then we just kind of went to bed because it was a well-made documentary, but in any case, it was still heavy subject matter.
It really was, yeah.
All right, let's move on to something a bit lighter, but not necessarily more enjoyable. We have the opening act with Jimmy O Yang and Cedric the Entertainer.
Oh, how did I feel about that? I feel like it was ages since I watched it. It was fun. It was all right. I think I wanted more character development in terms of Jimmy O Yang finding his feet or achieving something, but it was more of a steady plateau than anything else.
Yeah.
Wow. I can't, at the end of the day, it was just a matter of at least them trying to show how hard it was for him to get the guts to do comic and be a stand-up comedian anyway, or what it takes. So I appreciate it from that angle. Everything else in terms of rooting for the character to at least see a good set from them, you're not going to get that.
Yeah. And I think, because I really like Jimmy O Yang, and I try to, be open about it, because it does have Bill Burr in there. We fucking love Bill Burr. Ken Jeong's also in it as well. I agree. They kept giving examples of him bombing, and we never got that triumphant moment until like the end of the movie. So we're watching him continuously fail and bomb, like worse than the Joker in his stand-up comedian sketch, right? Like he just kept failing and he kept doing badly. And you know what I've noticed as well? I feel like when you have comedians at the helm of something, because they're so used to making fun of themselves, they probably will take it a lot further in regards to making fun of themselves than you would in a normal movie. So I think it's fun to them that they're making fun of each other. But from a story point of view, it's like, okay, so why? Because at this point, you don't even look like you're a talented comedian. So why are we rooting for you? I did listen to an interview with the director and writer Steve Byrne, and he actually writes a lot of this is based on his own experiences as a stand-up comedian. And the trailer situation is actually something that happened to him in his real life. The radio situation is also something that happened to him in his real life. But much like the talent of stand-up comedians, I think this would have been better as a set as opposed to an actual movie.
Yeah.
I think the only real movie that we've watched recently that has comedians in it that works is The King of Staten Island.
I don't think I agree with that, because The King of Staten Island is quite different in terms of storyline, because you're getting to see Pete Davidson's life rather than an aspect of it, rather than us just focusing on him struggling to become an artist, or we're getting everything from him. With this movie, we're just focusing on an aspect of his journey to be a stand-up comedian and the amount of times he bombed. To a certain degree, after you've watched the 30th set of him bombing, you're like, Jesus Christ, mate. Is this what all the movie is?
Yeah. Well, I think that proves my point. Like, you can't have comedians in a film and it not feel like a comedian film. Sometimes when like SNL produces a movie and it just feels like a elongated sketch. Like, yeah, I do think, and I think that's the only one that I look back on fondly that have comedians in it. But again, by your definition, it wouldn't count. But I say it does in my own household. But yeah, it was a movie to watch. I don't think it was 100%. Like, I definitely will forget that I watched it.
Yeah.
And Jimmy O Yang's, I think it was Amazon, the comedy special. That was much better than this movie.
I enjoy that more, for sure.
Absolutely. So let's finish off with the last selection that we have on the poll, and it is the film Relic.
I don't know. I think it was an alright movie. I don't know what I expected. I thought there were aspects of the story that felt a bit stale, or it didn't move as fast as I thought it would, or at least what I expected it to be.
Yeah,
which is fair enough. But at the end of it, I sat there thinking, I'm not gonna ever rewatch this.
So I'm just going to take a nap.
I'm not probably going to remember this in a month or 2 months time.
Or even now.
I should just make some subliminal comments about it.
Yeah, just some really general. It's a movie that exists.
Yeah.
But we do love Emily Mortimer, and I really enjoyed her Australian accent because this is very rare. I don't think I've ever come across a scenario where the actor still sounds like themselves, but they sound like the accent they're supposed to sound like. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I could still hear her voice. It was just as if she grew up in Australia and not in Britannia. And I definitely prefer her Australian accent over Rose Byrne's real accent. But going back to the film, I don't know. It didn't hit me in the ways that I guess it was supposed to hit me. What I will say is there are two different realms that we were exploring. There was the realms of real life shit of the grandma possibly having or definitely having dementia or Alzheimer's to that sort of extent. And then we also have that fantastical sort of nature where the grandma is possibly some sort of beast, like some Pan's Labyrinth sort of motherfucking beast, right?
Some cold creature.
Yeah, right? So what I guess what I was finding hard to grasp was they never really committed to what world they were going to be in. Because at the end of the day, like to go through like dementia, it's already hard enough. You know what I mean? So I was finding it hard to see where the horror element was because it's already hard as it is. So why was that needed to have that random monster coming out of nowhere? Maybe from the grandma's point of view, it was really, shattering. But, from a carer's point of view, from a family point of view, it's already a reality having to deal with a family member that has dementia. So I guess I didn't really care for it because if you're going to throw a monster in or two, like let us dive all the way in there, which I guess you could argue happened in like the last third of the movie. But also at the same time, I just didn't care for it. Like I would prefer to watch Still Alice if I wanted to, watch something in regards to dementia. And if I wanted to watch something more fantastical, then I wouldn't be watching this.
Yeah, well, just rewatch Hereditary.
Right?
Yeah.
What I will say that I thought was something that didn't get explored that I thought was going to be like the biggest part of the movie was the stained glass window in the door. I thought that's what the movie was hinging on. It was also on the movie poster as well. I don't think this is a spoiler, but I guess take it as a spoiler if you like. There were drawings where Emily Mortimer's character, she explained that this was on the grandfather's door and he kind of lost it by the end of it, like if you want to call that dementia or the demons or the monsters taking over him. And he was in that cabin or that little house by himself, right? And then when they abolished the house, they took that fucking stained glass window and put it on their own door. Like I'm not very superstitious, but I wouldn't do that either. Like I think you're just asking for spirits, whether they exist or not.
Especially when the thing looked moldy as fuck, man.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You're just, the ghost stories I grew up with have definitely stuck with me enough to know not to bring anything from that house into the existing house. So I thought that was going to be more to the story, and I won't spoil it, but I know a couple of you guys have watched it already. It does denote to the possibility that the stained glass window does become something more, but then until it does become something, we're kind of just meandering between Emily Mortimer's character going through the real experience of accepting that her mother needs to go into a home and what that means. You know what I mean? Like it just turned into real life, going to pay the bills, going to do this. And then, oh yeah, there's a monster eating my mother's memories, photos. You know what I mean?
And I guess I appreciated the ending.
I don't agree. I'm just
no. I think it took a lot for Emily Mortimer's character to do that and to stay back and to accept that, which we see that she also gets infected. So it took some courage, especially when she wasn't ready to fully be there for the mom.
But you see, that could have happened without all of the monsters and ghouls.
True.
Yeah, then that's my qualm. That's my foundational qualm.
Well, it just shows you, in spite of that, she still found the courage to, you know?
Yeah, I suppose. I suppose, but not really, but good for you. How about that? Well, thank you guys. That was a very tantalizing, it took us on a whirlwind of all emotion, covering all sort of subject matters. And thank you so much. We love and appreciate you. Hopefully you guys are doing well, and we'll see you guys in another episode.
See ya.
Bye.